Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the Stockholm Chamber of Commerce. My name is Andreas Hatzigeorgiou. I'm the CEO of the Chamber here, and I am thrilled to have so many of you here for the unveiling of this year's Global Business Climate Survey. As we stand on the cusp of unveiling this year's version of the Global Business Climate Survey, I'm reminded of John F. Kennedy's words. Change is the law of life. And those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. I think that's something in these times that we are living through today can agree on, correct? The landscape of international trade is indeed changing, influenced by the slowing global economy and other external factors from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted economic activity and international container traffic, flows, air travel, tourism, you name it, to the energy crisis that was excelled also by the horrific Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, a lot of things are going on. It's uncertain times. Yet, the report that we are focusing on today and publishing is very interesting and reveals that many Swedish companies, especially in manufacturing, continue to find success abroad. And I think this is encouraging. Their perception of the business climate in emerging markets has shown a marked improvement, in fact. These businesses are leveraging the Swedish brand and our core values of equality, openness, freedom, transparency, etc., to pioneer innovative, sustainable, climate-friendly solutions. More specific, I think that some key results are especially encouraging. And we will hear more on the key results and what we'd like to emphasize in this joint endeavor together with Business Sweden and the Chambers International and the Swedish Chambers Abroad. I think that we can just name a few of the things that I think are especially enlightening. Despite the heightened challenges in developed markets, optimism flourishes in emerging ones. A majority of our companies have reported profitability, with those in the Americas. I'm looking at Jonas out of Brazil, seem to be leading. And about 48% of Swedish companies have plans to increase their investments in the coming years. And notably, 8 out of 10 say that they consider the brand Sweden as a strengthening factor for their business. So, friends, as we stand united for the global business prosperity, we must address also evident rifts and divides in our society. I think that acts of disrespect and intolerance have no place in our world today. And I think that, here I'm looking at Minister Forssell, I think that the Swedish government has rightly recognized the pain such actions can inflict. And from the business community, I'd like to emphasize and stress and underline that we reject also from the business community side any such provocations. Even as we uphold our cherished rights to freedom of assembly and expression, we must remain vigilant against forces seeking to sow discord and polarization. With this, I'd also like to extend a heartfelt thanks to the Swedish Chambers of Commerce around the world. Your relentless work is invaluable. Your role in supporting Swedish companies in thriving in foreign markets is essential for Swedish prosperity, for openness, for free trade, and in the long run, I'm convinced also for building a more peaceful world with mutual understanding and cooperation across borders. So thank you. And thank you specifically for your work in making this report, gathering data together with Business Sweden, such a success story. With that, ladies and gentlemen, as we delve into the findings of this report, which will be super interesting, let's remember, international businesses isn't just about trade and commerce. It's about fostering understanding, building bridges, and creating a world where prosperity is shared by all. Thank you. And with that, give a warm round of applause to Minister Forssell.
Thank you, Andreas. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you, dear everyone. True pleasure to be here today. And thank you for this opportunity to participate here today in the launch of the Global Business Climate Survey. And of course, also for an interesting and in many ways excellent report. As all of you know, we are living in exciting times, to be a bit diplomatic. And there are many things going on at the same time. One of the things that I would really like to underline is the support for our Swedish businesses. And I apologize for perhaps sounding like a politician right now. You know, to a politician, everything is important at the same time. But let us be clear, I think, about one thing, and that is international trade and having competitive Swedish companies is a foundation, perhaps the very foundation on which Sweden for so many years and even decades has built its prosperity on, and which I believe also will continue, must continue, to be the cornerstone for our future progress. And this is, at the same time, I mean, this is something that is easier said than done. And I think it's important to underline that we can never really take this for granted. We must always strive to do things even better, more effective, and being more competitive. As a government, we are trying to lead by example. And one of the things I would like to point at today is the obvious thing that what for several decades in Sweden used to be two different ministerial portfolios. Development cooperation on the one hand side and the foreign trade portfolio on the other hand side is now one combined portfolio. And that is for obvious reasons, I would like to say. First of all, we are a government that very much believes in the power of innovation, of entrepreneurship, of foreign trade, of investments, of market economy, as a tool for creating new products and services, but also for using it as a springboard for so many countries out there to be able to do the same kind of journey that we in Sweden have already done, but which they still must do in order to build their own economic growth. And I think one can also look at our own journey in this sense as a great example of this. You know, it was not foreign aid, even though foreign aid in so many ways is still important to fight poverty. But it was not foreign aid that really took Sweden from being one of the poorest countries in the whole of Europe, located in the northern parts, remote parts of Europe, to one of the most successful countries in the whole Europe or perhaps the world today. No, it was trade, it was business, it was market economy, private property rights, the rule of law, entrepreneurship. And we believe very much that that is exactly, like I said, what will be key for the countries in the world that still have this journey ahead of them that we have already done. And to be very honest, perhaps this is a lesson that is still being relevant also for Sweden. Because today, much of this political debate in Sweden still evolves around how these resources should be distributed. And that is an important discussion, of course. But at the same time, much less debate is going on about how these resources have been created, all the hard work that all the entrepreneurs, all the investors, all the risks that they have taken to really create this economic growth and wealth. I think we must become much better at nurturing what has built our country strong and what will also keep us strong in the future. The task of politics here is really to ensure that all our world-leading companies, that they have excellent conditions to be able to do their job and what they are best at, that make companies that are well-positioned and to be able to reach their full potential. And we are working very hard for this. This is not an easy task. We are, as you all know, we have very recently finished the Swedish presidency of the European Council for 2023. I think we had some good impact. I'm biased here, as you know, but I think we had some good impact on our most important priorities. For the first time in a very, very long time, competitiveness in the European Union was put at top of the agenda. And it happened during Swedish leadership. And asking me, I think that should be on top of the agenda for every EU presidency, because it is the true cornerstone of the European Union. We are now in the process of trying to do our best to dismantling trade barriers for goods, services, data flows. But it can also be, and this is really important, it can also be by simply not introducing a lot of new regulation and new laws. And frankly speaking, some eyebrows were perhaps raised in Brussels when I said this, very genius thought. Please do nothing more. No new taxes, no new regulation, and new rules, no more laws. Just let things be like they are. But I think you see what I'm trying to reach at here. Because we are having today a situation where perhaps every individual piece of new legislation may not significantly affect the regulatory burden, but where the combined effects of all this new legislation that is being proposed can be very burdensome. So Europe needs perhaps fewer rules, but better ones, and a greater long-term perspective. Today, Sweden and the Swedish industry is facing a compound of new challenges. We have the geopolitical tensions all around the world. We have the increasing international competition for raw materials, supply chain pressures, a rise in protectionism all around the world, and regional trade conflicts, just to mention a few. The government will launch a new trade strategy already this year with the aim of increasing Sweden's exports, strengthening our competitiveness, and also promoting investments. The previous export strategy of Sweden was developed in 2015, before the pandemic, before the war, before the major geopolitical movements were as prominent as they are today. And perhaps the question is not what has changed since then. Perhaps the question should be what has not changed since then. So, although only a few years have passed, the need for a new analysis, the need for a new approach is very clear. International competitiveness needs to be strengthened, and this new strategy also needs to address innovation, the green transition, of course, digitalization, but also a sharper toolbox for promotion. So the green transition, the increasingly rapid technological development, are changing the way companies develop their production and their value chains. And we truly believe that this is a great opportunity for Sweden. So we need to take the full advantages here of the synergies between climate finance, trade, and also innovations. And this is, of course, also true when it comes to Ukraine. Needless to say, the challenges and the problems are enormous. First and foremost, we must help Ukraine to win this war. That is the single most important thing right now. But in addition to that, we must also help Ukraine to rebuild its country again. Not to what it used to be before the war, but into something new, more safe, more green, more modern. And these needs can absolutely not be met by foreign aid alone, because that's impossible. So we need to attract more private capital. We need to attract more foreign investments, and we need more trade between Ukraine and the rest of Europe. Foreign aid and foreign trade all together. So work on this new trade strategy is ongoing. It involves large parts of the government offices. And you have here, I want to underline, a very decisive role. Because in order for us to be able to sharpen our export promotion efforts, we need to hear your suggestions on what we can do in order to open more doors for you globally. So we really need to have, and I think we in so many ways already have, a good understanding of the constraints and pressure points facing Swedish business in the global market. And it is my belief that this report launching today contributes to just that. And let me be very clear. The needs and also the demands of Swedish companies must be the starting point for any measures and activities by the government to promote and support Swedish industry, trade and expansion abroad. And it is not least for this reason that the Global Business Climate Survey of 2023 and its key insights are, I think, very timely as we prepare to strengthen the export promotion activities in the future. I very much welcome the continued dialogue and exchange of views and insights between the Swedish industry and the government. Let's call it a kind of a roadmap, I think, for further improving the conditions for Swedish companies internationally, both in markets, in our neighborhood, and also globally, of course. Lastly, I wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed to this report, and you thereby share your know-how with others, considering the path to going global. And essentially, what is good for Swedish companies is also good for Sweden. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words, Minister Forssell. We are very grateful and appreciate your engagement in these issues and also launching a new sort of approach in Swedish trade and foreign development aid policy, which we from the business community fully support and stand behind. So, partnership is the new kind of leadership, and we are so grateful from the Swedish Chambers International side and thrilled to be working closely together with Business Sweden in producing this global business climate survey. So without further ado, give a warm round of applause to Business Sweden's CEO, Jan Larsson.
Thank you so much, Andreas, and likewise, we are super grateful for this collaboration. I think it shows that we stand together and that the Team Sweden spirit is much broader than only a few authorities, and we can do this together across the globe, and we can also reach out, and I think we symbolize very much that we are here to collaborate. Sweden is too small to have in fighting in different parts of the world. When we collaborate, when we do things together, we do them good. And this is actually the fourth year in a row that we conduct this this together, the Global Business Climate Survey. I was going to start off by saying that I don't envy you, Johan, being in a situation with maybe the most difficult political situation that has been for at least, well, probably ever. With, as has been said here, a war on European soil, with increasing protectionism and almost a war battle, at least, between China and the US, with increasing numbers of countries starting to say that, well, we want to import, but only if you produce at least a substantial amount of this in our country, a protectionism that is growing. And at the same time, also naturally, the aftermath of the BRICS of the COVID pandemic, with the BRICS countries that a few years back was kind of a fairly loose collaboration area that is now actually moving their positions forward. And when you think about BRICS, it's more than they represent more than half of the global population. So we cannot really. Well, we cannot forget BRICS in the world, the new world that is developing, and actually in this environment, then as Minister of Trade, also marry together trade and aid, which in itself is a huge challenge. So I don't envy you, but after having listened to you, I can say that I kind of changed my mind, because what could be more important and what could be more, therefore, more fun than to actually aim so high as you're doing. So I really think that I just want to start off by saying that I think it's courageous, and I really hope that we together can do something really great out of this, because the world is changing, and we need to see all those opportunities that are out there. And I think those opportunities were very nicely pointed to in your speech. So let's hope that we can carry on the collaboration between us and the Swedish Chambers International, also to the entire work going forward. I think that maybe the most I think, exciting things from the report is actually very much the result of this difficult and changing world. One of the cool things here is that all of a sudden it's not 2 years ago, it was basically China and the US and a few European countries that were leading the table, that were leading in markets that Swedish companies saw as the most attractive to do business in. It's not anymore. And there are two countries, and I was going to almost ask the crowd here who you think it is. But the first one is fairly easy if you just think about the world a little bit. Naturally, India is increasing, and actually in the league of countries right now, India is the country that Swedish companies in general feel is the best kind of business climate area to be in. And why is that? Well, I think it is really the result of this world turmoil that is going on there. It is difficult to see how to maneuver in the US with the election coming up, with even though the IRA naturally is very, very positive for many companies that wants to invest in America, at the same time they try to maneuver on how to deal with the policy there. It is difficult to see how they should maneuver in China. Now, naturally, both these big markets are still very attractive, but there are two others coming up. India is one of them. And naturally, India in this position has managed to position themselves in the world as a stable country, kind of in between, opening up for investments, opening up for business, having a huge, the world's most populated country today, passing China earlier this spring, and a huge middle income market for Western companies. So they are very attractive. The other one I could not see coming. And I think that is the result of another interesting trend that is shown in the report. And that is that the green transition, climate smart technology, is increasing in importance in all these markets. Earlier it was the big thing in Europe. Now, compared to last year, it is increasing dramatically in Asia, but also the Middle East. So the second most important market or most attractive market for Swedish companies is actually the Middle East. UAE is whom we have asked about specifically, but I think that is a proxy for the entire region. So Middle East and India is coming up dramatically and fast in the eyes of Swedish companies. And I think that is really illustrative to what is happening in the world right now. It is a brand new world that is rising. And we see then that when the green transition is increasing in the agenda from Middle East-based companies and Middle East-based climates and customers, then Swedish companies see that they have a role to play there. They have business to make, and they find very, very good kind of collaboration and connection in the entire market. Running up as well is, I think, also interesting. Mexico, very much, I think, because Mexico is kind of the gateway into the North American market, so you can produce stuff in Mexico, and you also see that Mexico also has a growing economy ahead of them. And Indonesia, which is a country that a few years back we easily forgot. But Indonesia, the fourth most populated country of the world, is also growing and also have a very clear path forward when it comes to growth. And Swedish companies are starting to realize that there is huge potential there. So in a very, very changing world, and a very, very fragmented and a very, very difficult world, I am really happy to hand over the words to Lena Sellgren to start introducing more details from this report.
Thank you. You first. Thank you. Thank you, and good to see you all here. Many of us saw each other last year as well. And I'm happy to moderate the session. We will start with deep diving a bit into the results, and then a prominent panel that will help us to deep dive behind the results a little bit, because we just ask broad questions and then we need to understand a little bit more what's behind this. And as mentioned by Johan, this is our fourth executive year that we do this Global Business Climate Survey. And we reach out to more than 1,600 Swedish company representatives globally in 23 countries. So that's amazing. And we do this in a joint collaboration, as has been mentioned as well, but there are many people behind this, from Business Sweden, Swedish Chambers International, the Chambers Abroad, and of course, the embassies and consulates as well. So that's a very strong effort that we do, and it's strong when we do this together to actually see what the business climate, of course, looks like, but also the success factors, the local conditions, and also sustainability, trade barriers, and other things that we deep dive a little bit into. So that's something that we hope that all policymakers, and in particular, of course, company representatives in their strategic work can actually look into this, compare the results between regions and markets as well. But to do this, of course, you always take the ones that have, or you try to do at least, the ones that have compiled all the results and written the reports. I would like to welcome up on stage our project manager and responsible for the Global Business Climate Survey, Manuela Stjärna, from Business Sweden's office in Madrid. So most welcome to you. Give her a warm applause. So I think I missed, you can see this, the picture from the slide, I forgot these. We start off the Business Climate Survey, Manuela. If we look into this, could you give us a little bit of the perspective that the companies do have? I mean, the economic development looks quite gloomy out there, but the business climate, it looks a bit different. It's not so bad. So please help us.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Lena, and thank you everyone coming here today and listening also online. As you can see here in the following graph, we have the 23 different markets that were part of this year's survey, and where we have asked how is the business climate from an index 1 to 5, meaning 1 very poor and 5 very good. And we have also tried to look at it from a 3 years perspective so that we can compare between 2021, 2022, and 2023. So as Johan was talking also, we have some the emerging markets that have more positive results compared to last year. So these are India, UAE, Mexico, and Indonesia. Developed markets have dampened a little bit their business climate view compared to last year. But still, if we look at North America, it is a little bit, the yellow column is a little bit lower than the blue one, but still above 3.5, which is still positive. Similarly, for nearly all of the Western Europe markets, the business climate is a little bit less optimistic compared to last year, but still above 3. So we can see that the business climate is still positive, but a little bit more cautious in developed markets.
Okay, so did I understood it correct? You say that some of the emerging markets are performing better, or they see the business climate in increasing a little bit, and the developed market is a bit more dampened.
Exactly. So that is how Swedish companies abroad are looking at business opportunities outside of Sweden.
Good, but if we look ahead and see a little bit on the performance, then we have to go back a year, of course, to see 2022. How does it look like? Were the Swedish companies doing business abroad profitable?
Yes. So when asked Swedish companies abroad how their profitability was last year, 68% responded that they were profitable. 13% break even, and 12% reported a loss. These results are very similar to the 2021 results, where 70% of Swedish companies globally outside of Sweden were profitable. We always look in the analysis both from a regional market perspective. So from a regional perspective, Swedish companies located in the Americas reported the highest share of profitability last year. But Europe, APAC, and MEA Plus was very close behind. From a market perspective, Brazil and the Netherlands reported the highest share of profitable results year 2022. And China and Hong Kong had the highest share of negative results year 2022. And when asking ourselves what kind of companies are they, of course, everyone or like a big amount of the Swedish companies were profitable, but large industrial companies captured the largest share of profitable results year 2022.
Excellent. That's not so bad if we think about how it looks like globally, but this year, this year could be a little bit different. So if we look into investment plans, that's interesting to see and will give us an idea of how it will look like for 2023, I think. How does it look like?
Exactly. So as you say, Lena, investments plan going forward are a little bit more complex, and that's why we're going to go through this a little bit slower. So 15% of Swedish companies abroad aim to significantly increase their investments. And these ones are located in Canada, Brazil, and India. Mm-hmm. If we look at which companies that said that they will slightly increase their investment compared to current levels, these ones were mainly located in the Americas and the APAC region. And it was interesting also to see that it was mainly newcomers, so companies that didn't have just arrived to these markets. They are the ones planning to significantly or slightly increase their investments. If we sum this up, 15 plus 33, we have nearly half of Swedish companies planning to increase investments. So it looks nice, but if we compare to last year's result, it's 7% less. So we can see that Swedish companies are a little bit more cautious also when talking about investments going forward. When we ask which companies are not aiming to change their investment plans, that doesn't mean that they will not invest anything next year. That does only mean that they will not increase their investment levels compared to current. We can see an interesting change in Southern Europe, in Europe in general, seeing that Southern Europe and UK have the higher share of companies planning to invest next year, while in Northern Europe, for example, Germany and Netherlands, Swedish companies are a little bit more cautious. So it's an interesting trend compared to last year's results. And then, of course, we have a minor share of companies that are planning to slightly reduce, significantly reduce, or leave the market, normally 50%. And even if this is a minor share of companies, they are located in Mexico, Vietnam, and South Africa. And these are the markets where Swedish companies aim to decrease a little bit their investment compared to last year.
Thank you. And it means that, of course, we have fewer companies that will invest this year, but still quite a large part if we summarize this a little bit. So I think it doesn't, at least not yet, look so bad from a Swedish perspective. Maybe because the fact that has been mentioned by all the previous speakers that we are very well positioned in Sweden or Swedish companies with smart solutions and moving into digital and green transition. So that's probably why we also see a demand from abroad still, although the economy is slowing down and the global demand. So I mean, it's interesting also to look into success factors, and there are a lot of them, and it has changed a bit. We usually say that these kind of factors do not change to a big extent between different years, but this year we actually saw a shift in the importance of these factors, putting focus on what? You can all see it on the slide.
Exactly. So as we can see here, cost efficiency, sales competence, and brand awareness are the most important success factors for Swedish companies to maintain their competitiveness globally. Cost efficiency is mainly focused for companies located in Western Europe, APAC, and MEA+. And this is a shift, especially for markets in Western Europe and MEA+. So we are becoming, or Swedish companies are a little bit more cost sensitive in those markets. Sales competence is their main priority in the Americas region. And what Lena was mentioning is the shift in partnerships and local collaborations. So after the pandemic, we saw that Swedish companies really wanted to partner, to be in the same room. It was very important. But now cost efficiency and sales competence is becoming a main priority to become competitive in a global perspective.
And could, of course, be the result of the higher costs, inflation, interest rate in the Western world, at least. I think it means that when demand is slowing down, of course, you move more into cost efficiency thinking. That you should always do this, but that's probably why we see this result. And then I think we move on a little bit we have the brand awareness and the brand Sweden. How important is this for companies doing businesses abroad? Is it beneficial to have the brand Sweden doing business in the different markets?
Yes. So when the survey was sent out, brand Sweden was at its stable high. So this is a factor that we have seen over these last 4 years, that brand Sweden is always very successful and important for Swedish companies to become successful globally. So this year we have 81% of Swedish companies, meaning that brand Sweden is to a great extent, to an extent, or partially important for their success abroad. If we look at from a market perspective, brand Sweden is especially important in India, Brazil, and South Korea. And still important, but to a lesser degree, in the United States, Canada, and Hong Kong. So as of today, and when the survey was sent out, brand Sweden is very important to be successful.
And we send out the survey during springtime, so that could, of course, change. If we look more into the local conditions, where do we see companies being more satisfied, and where do we see the challenges where they probably need more of help from Team Sweden and the promotion system?
Yeah, so it's always difficult to present local conditions in a global perspective because every local condition has its market focus. But for this year, the most important local conditions for Swedish companies abroad was personal safety, suppliers, and service providers. Suppliers and service providers was very positive both in the Americas and the Western Europe. Personal safety was very important also for companies in Europe and APAC. And in the MEA Plus region, physical infrastructure was a really good local condition, especially in the UAE again. Talking about less satisfying local conditions, we have license and permits, corporate taxation, and labor market regulations. So again, as Lena was saying, this is difficult conditions in a global perspective for all markets, independent in which region we're talking about. And that's where Team Sweden can really help out Swedish companies abroad.
Great. And the last area to move into is where we have a lot of focus, so it's sustainability and not least environmental aspects. Do we see any changes going forward? Is it important for the customers' decision that they take?
So as Johan was saying, this is the 4th year we're doing this analysis, and we're very happy to start doing time trends also. And for the 4th year in a row, sustainability and environmental aspects is very important for Swedish companies going globally. This year, 43% of Swedish companies says that their customers globally care to an extent or to a great extent when purchasing their services or product, having an environmental footprint on it. If we also summarize with partially, we have up to 70% of Swedish companies stretching the importance of environmental aspects in their products and services. From a market perspective, the Netherlands, UK, and Germany express the most important or highest interest for environmental aspects from their customers, meaning that Western Europe is the region where environmental aspect is considered the most. But we're very happy to see a positive trend also in the regions of MEA Plus and the APAC, where, for example, in India and the UAE, they had a huge increase compared to last year in the environmental performance. Although in the Americas region, it is unchanged view on the interest in the environmental performance for their products. So in general, a positive trend.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much. I would try to summarize shortly what you have told us and the insights that you gave us. So dampened sentiment and business climate in the developed countries, markets, and a bit more encouraging and increasing in emerging markets. Last year, most companies, the Swedish ones abroad, were profitable. But this year, when they look into the investment plans a year ahead, fewer plan to increase investments. They still invest, of course, or the most of them, but fewer increase. And then looking into brand Sweden as well as sustainability, we see in an encouraging way that this is increasing. So that's really good. I would like to thank you so much for sharing, Manuela. And now we continue with the panel discussion and the panelists. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the prominent panel, I would like to invite you up on stage, and we have from AstraZeneca, Åsa Manelius, Supply Chain Manager. The second one, thank you. Daniel Lundgren, who is Commercial Officer at Siemens Energy. Welcome to you as well. And last but not least, Ranjit Jakli, Managing Director at Kraft Powercon, a Swedish industry company. Most welcome to you as well. So, when you have listened to the presentation of the key insights from the report and the previous speakers, including the minister, of course, what's your reflection? We start with you, Åsa. How do you see the business climate from your perspective?
Well, I believe in general, we share, I think, the perspective and the view and some of the trends highlighted in the report. Representing the pharmaceutical business, we are in a growing business. We have a very positive business climate. We see that overall, actually, some of our growth is really fueled not only by emerging market, but also by the developing countries, which is perhaps a little bit contradictory to that general picture. Looking into the global pharma business last year, we grew a little bit more than 8% as a total industry in sales. We foresee going forward an annual increase of around a little bit more than between 5 and 6% annually for the next couple of years. And a lot of that growth driven by developing and emerging countries. However, still both Europe and US is keeping up. But we do have a high expectation on in particular Latin America, in India, as was mentioned. But also Africa is coming. So that kind of together comprises of that 5.7%. And AstraZeneca is doing well as a company. Last year, our revenue grew with 19, that's almost 20% in total.
That's amazing.
Reaching $44 billion sales. And 26% of that is the emerging market. So that is highly represented in the numbers. So I think we share that. We also, of course, share the importance and priority for sustainability. Sustainable healthcare is going to be of vital importance to the whole planet going forward. So anything we can do there, because we need to partner. It's not only the pharmaceutical companies providing the medicines, it's the whole sector, it's in the infrastructure and the governmental and society around it that needs to partner to make that a sustainable healthcare going forward. So I think that is some of the aspects. And then again, the war for talent, we'll probably come back to that during the panel discussion, but the war for talent is a really important factor going forward.
Good that you mentioned this, because I truly believe that you are completely right. If we don't have the talent and the competence, it's hard for us. So education and this focus. We will come back to this. So thank you so much. Daniel, from your perspective, what's your reflection when you're listening to this? Where do you agree, or where do you have maybe other views?
I think, I mean, in terms of first, maybe just to set the scene a little bit, what I represent. I mean, Siemens Energy is a big group. And what we do out of Sweden here is that we have some 4,000 people that come to work every day. Do everything from R&D to manufacturing to spare parts. And it's a location in south of Sweden, or outside of Norrköping, Finspång, where we deliver globally to the world. So we will have one operation for the global world, and it's for us. It makes us also feel, you know, where are things happening, and it's our number one market is Thailand of the world. So we are primarily selling outside of EU. We're selling to end users, large projects, which are then also driven by how the countries are doing, and you know how we operate there, and then. After big investments for countries like Thailand, it's also then for very spread out. So I think that's also what we see. You will have to pick on each continent what's going to be your hub and how you're going to operate out if you do big projects. And it's so for us, in terms of what's happening, it's I think competitiveness was spoken about, which is maybe a nicer word than cost efficiency, I think. Sounds much more fun. I think and that competitiveness is something that is driven out of Sweden. Before also, I think was on the agenda of the last half year. I think it's important that Europe continues to be competitive. I think that we have historically also always been exporting our innovations from here out to the world, and now it's about adapting and finding those opportunities. And for us, Asia Pacific is very much important.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting because you are touching up on a little bit geopolitical tensions that is lying around all this, and this will have an effect as well, and not so easy to do business today. There is a lot that you need to bring up on the table, and we will come back to this a little bit. Ranjit, from your perspective, what's your first reflections on this key results that we have just listened to?
Thank you, Lena. And I would agree with the findings of the report, of the survey, as well as what Andreas mentioned about change. I think it's super important, and you can see that through the report and through the business that we're doing every day. And we all spoke about the challenging conditions in terms of inflation and interest rates and the uncertainty, especially in the Western world. In some way, the developing world seems to be a little bit more resilient towards that. But two things interestingly stand out in this report. One is, of course, India, which is interesting to us, being a India-owned but Swedish headquartered company. And the other part is the importance of Swedish competitiveness in the developing world, which is becoming increasingly important. So on India, let me try to summarize what I feel could be the drivers that it has made such a big change as compared to the previous years of this survey. One possible reason I would say could be a lot of global businesses looking at de-risking their own investments in China.
Yeah.
So, and India is typically seen as, one other large domestic market kind of economy or country, which is interesting from the investment perspective. So, of course, companies continue to invest in China, but India has become one other important destination to de-risk their own investments. And then you also have a pretty interesting base that you can build on in India. You have an average age of just over 28 years, so very vibrant and young economy. You have a growing middle class, which means that you have more buying power. And on top of that, over the last few years, there has been this huge move towards digitalization. Some of you may have seen pictures of street vendors, even selling fruit, having a QR code on their cart, by which you can directly pay even a couple of dollars. And this is true; it actually happens. On the part of the Swedish competitiveness abroad, what I can share is that I still strongly believe what I first saw when I came to Sweden as an Indian company coming here in 2010 or so, that one should not underestimate the strength and competitiveness of Northern European and especially Swedish companies. And it comes, obviously the cost is not the lowest here, but then on the other hand, the guarantee of the logistics, power, water, basic things to run your company, the availability of competence, both on blue collar as well as white collar side when it comes to industrial companies, the strength of the structure and processes that you have within Swedish companies as a natural part of their culture is a fantastic positive towards bringing in competitiveness. And I think in some way that overrides the a need for the lowest cost in terms of the hourly rate. So that can maybe help to bring some confidence into Western European and especially Swedish companies.
Thank you so much. If we just reflect on your representing pharmaceutical and the energy sector, we have the green transition, pharmaceutical is always in focus, and we have other areas as well, the digitalization and new ways of thinking. But above that, what do you see, Åsa, for example, for your industry and your company, not least, you are expanding, as you explained, and succeeding and growing your business globally. Are there other factors that you think are really important for the sector at the moment?
If you look into the pharmaceutical sector, of course, the demand for healthcare is growing worldwide. Many factors contributing. One, of course, aging population. Today, we are more than 1 billion people on the globe at the age of 60 and above. 2050, that will double to 2 billion individuals in the age of 60 and above. We see more people being diagnosed by chronic diseases. Non-communicable diseases represent about 40 million deaths yearly today. These are chronic diseases like cardiovascular diseases, metabolic diseases like diabetes. We see it in oncology and also in the respiratory area. Many of these diseases also have some common risk factors in terms of lifestyle factors. It is about smoking. Smoking is a risk factor, diet, lack of exercise, for instance. And then, not to forget, the climate crisis is also a health crisis.
Yeah, a good point.
Clean air, clean water, sufficient food, safe shelter are also very important health factors. Polluted air, high temperatures are really high risk factors for respiratory diseases, for cardiovascular and heart failure diseases. And a lack of safe and pure water that compromises hygiene, which again can cause diseases like diarrhea, which affects too many children today. So there are a number of factors kind of contributing to our demand for healthcare. And then we are moving as well from more primary care solution into more specialized care solutions. Which again is putting certain kind of challenges into the health system.
And opportunities, probably, since you can use the digital solutions and all this.
And to that, for us, one of the most important factors is the innovation climate. We need to have sound science to help to support and drive the new solutions we need for this whole ecosystem.
And then you are back on competence and skills that you mentioned in your introduction. Daniel, if we continue with you, what should you say from an energy transition perspective? You mentioned that it differs between different markets and locations, and they are different. But do you see that it's an advantage to being a Swedish-German company?
I mean, I think for us, it has been, first of all, I've been in the energy business now for 20 years. It was boring at the beginning. It was a lot about just maintaining what you had. I think in the last, 5 years, it's been booming. We speak about, transforming entire energy systems. So for us, in the industry, now is the time. So you don't speak so much about capabilities, but rather about, what is your capacity in terms of delivering. But it's power and electricity generation is a basic need for people. So of course, if you have growth, you will have more need of additional generation capacity. But also, as we said, more developed markets are now transforming, and out of Sweden we have almost 500 people in R&D.
But do you see the differences? Because to do the investments into this, you also need the capital.
Yes.
And that could be an issue in many parts of the world. So just a reflection.
It's a stable. We do a lot of R&D innovation investments out of here, but of course we want to have hubs that are close to our end user markets. And for sure we are then looking at what's specifically happening in Asia Pacific.
Do you think the hubs, just connecting it to the geopolitical tensions, does it have an effect on the business and the hubs, how you actually locate your business?
If you look at the power generation industry that we are in, we are driven by growth, we are driven by demand. We are, having technology that is sought after. So of course, how difficult it is to get into the market will matter. What are the requirements on localization?
Exactly.
And that, should be discussed in closed doors, I think.
I understand. We move on. Ranjit, from your perspective, and then a bit also when it comes to India, you have already mentioned that it's the time for not least the Indian market, but you're a global company. So your reflection from the energy perspective and the business that you're in.
Yeah, and the green transition, like I mentioned, it's clearly now the elephant in the room, so to speak, in terms of driving investments globally. A recent report by the UN Council on Trade and Development said that global investments fell by about 12%, I think it was last year in 2022. But on the other hand, investments that are goal towards the sustainable development goals increased by about 10% globally. So it's quite a huge difference that you can see, and how money is going towards sustainable development goals. On the energy side, it's very interesting. Siemens as a company is doing fantastic things on hydrogen as one example, with turbines moving from the natural gas fuel turbines towards hydrogen in one way. And in some way, I do believe that amongst the various choices that we have into the future for energy, hydrogen does seem to offer a sustainable and viable solution, given that the decarbonization goal is in place. So, it's huge shifts. And what's interesting also about this United Nations report is that in spite of the fact that investments in sustainable development goals have gone up by 12%, the gap between the demand and the supply of funds into developing economies has in fact widened. So exactly like you said, the investments are not spread in a uniform way. On the other hand, what's happening is that, of course, Western economies have been investing into green transition investments now for quite some time, while with developing countries, you can see opportunities that they've never seen before. So, for example, you have North Africa, which is looking at exporting renewable energy to Southern Europe across the Mediterranean. You have countries like India, Namibia, as one example, who want to export hydrogen. So it's very interesting opportunities now. It's a question of, as you said before, finding the investments needed to actually kickstart them.
And new markets that you have not been into to the same extent are at the moment more of interest. And it's changing, and you have the raw materials as well, so you can have a lot into this. But the success factors, as Manuela showed on one of the slides, we could see that cost efficiency, or Daniel, as you framed it, competitiveness, we can use this as well, but focusing more on cost efficiency, that's an important factor for sure for companies at the moment. The second one, according to the results, the global results, sales competence, and the third one, brand attractiveness, and partnerships, collaboration with customers, it's still important, but it's not the factor in the top 3 list. So Ranjit, will you continue a bit and focus on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with those findings again. It's very interesting how sales competence has also come in probably for the first time. And especially, if I understand right, in the US, this is also what we see. I just wanted to comment a bit about the brand awareness part of it, which of course is important for, from the point of view of being successful, especially in global markets. And if you look at brand Sweden as one example, which is really strong in many economies, in many countries around the world, what does it stand for? It stands for sustainability, and it stands in some way for reliability or dependability. This is how a lot of regions around the world, I think, see brand Sweden. So what's important now is to not just be known as that brand in many ways, but also to live that brand, so to speak. So last year, and continuing a little bit even today, as we've seen, the supply chain and the transportation segments, the cost issues have led to a choice for many companies around the world as to whether they maintain their dependability, as an image, or do they actually say, well, sorry, now we have to go with the waves that are coming towards us and pass them on to you. So it's very interesting how this opportunity came up last year, and I think a lot of Swedish companies and Northern European companies managed to keep their own brand by demonstrating their reliability and dependability during this time. So that's what really makes that brand strong.
Great, thank you. Daniel, would you like to continue from your perspective, the success factors?
I mean, historically, we have been able to name our customers in each country because they've been the likes of Vattenfall, utilities, you know them by heart. And now we need to co-develop new hydrogen opportunities with customers, with fuel suppliers. So it's a new ecosystem, larger scale activities. And for that, for sure, you will need a different kind of sales competence that we had in the past out there in our countries.
Yeah, I would like to ask a little bit more, because I think that's really interesting when we combine this and put it in the competence context. When companies say that they lack of competence, it's not just the engineers and the IT skilled people, it's the ones that have the opportunity to actually understand the future, a decade ahead, or I don't know, in the future, and take it today and understand what needs to be done. And of course, then you need to sell something else, and you need to create new kind of values. If you, for example, go from a linear business model to a circular one, and you should actually just start to discuss what is the value. Is that something that we can start with you, Danielle, and then continue with Åsa and Ranjit? Is that what you see when you say that you need to reframe?
I mean, it's sales competence, it's partnerships, and if you want to go circular, you will have more interfaces. So for sure, you need to understand what are the drivers of all the partners you have to create then this transformation that we are in the midst of.
And it's a risk, so you need to actually let people fail as well. So a new kind of leadership, maybe. Yeah, or you will have to be willing to invest in people who will not, get order intake month one, but maybe year one. Yeah. Thank you. I think Åsa would like to come in. Now it's
for us, I guess, of course, we are in an environment where our customers are the healthcare sector and healthcare providers. So that's something that we don't have kind of that direct access to the end user in that sense. But in terms of competence, yes, we need to be competent in the markets in we are active. So the commercial competence in those are important. But we see this as kind of a factor throughout our whole organization. We need scientific experts, the best scientific experts. We need highly skilled manufacturing staff to run our manufacturing plants. We see it across the whole value chain. We need to help our partners, the healthcare providers. Healthcare professionals are key to our success. A well-functioning healthcare system with healthcare providers, healthcare professionals that can give the appropriate treatment and prescribe the appropriate drugs is of course of vital importance. So that's kind of point to a partnership as well as a competence, which I think is broader to us than just kind of the sales competence. Again, for us, if we're looking into the results of the report, one of the key success factor, we talked about talent, is really to have a scientific excellence, being in an innovation climate and supporting innovation. We invest $10 billion in R&D every year to continue to drive the portfolio, to be able to find new treatment options for the common health challenges we just discussed. And in that environment, it's also important to have good IP protection, data protection, to support those products not being copied in a reasonable time in order also to reinvest in that research. And when we talk about success factor, we talk about sustainability. Yes, it's obvious about access to green and stable renewable energies. For us, it's also access to equitable healthcare. And having the partnership again with the healthcare system in order to ensure that, where of course the pharmaceuticals is part of that healthcare system, but how can we contribute to make equitable access across the globe?
So then you started off, Ranjit, with just saying that sustainability is one. If we look into this, what is this from and the brand Sweden perspective? So that sustainability is one, but then you can also add, of course, innovation and equality. So if we look a little bit more deeper into the brand Sweden, how important is it? Because we could see that overall in all the markets that we have been looking into, Swedish companies, more than 80% actually express that this is of value, great value, or of value to some extent for us. Would you like to start a bit? Because you already said that this is important for us because it's a sustainability stamp.
Yeah, I think brand Sweden is super important. And over the years, it has been standing for dependability and sustainability, in my opinion. The survey seems to indicate that some countries are more tuned to this brand Sweden feeling as compared to others. And part of that could be perhaps understood from the other winds that are blowing today globally, which are those of localization. It was mentioned before, right? So there is so much more of an inward-looking, both in policy as well as in business climate. You can see this pressure on businesses. It's almost in the hydrogen sector where we provide power supplies for electrolyzers. Sometimes we joke that if we have to be part of every project around the world, we have to have factories in every country in the world because the localization requirements are so strong. So I think the brand in some countries where the localization is becoming stronger and stronger, like the US as one example, is going to be a challenge to actually derive benefit out of. But on the other hand, several other countries like India as one example, Business Sweden, the brand of Swedish businesses and industries plays a very strong role in terms of buying decisions.
Do you see differences? I mean, we saw from the results that India, UAE and South Korea, these three markets increased and are in the top. Do you, from your perspective, see differences in different parts where you do your business of the world?
Yes, in fact, like Johan mentioned, the UAE was a surprise even to me when I looked at it. India was not that much of a surprise. Indonesia and Mexico are understandable, I would say. But yes, we still do see differences in the way that we have to do business. We even see more differences than before because of this trend towards localization.
Daniel.
On brand Sweden.
Brand Sweden,
I mean,
from your overall global perspective.
We receive 16,000 visitors every year in our little village where we operate.
In Finspång.
In Finspång. So 16,000 visitors every year. And I think that part of the experience they get when they come to Sweden, the visitors, is the brand Sweden, because it's, as you said, a lot about sustainability. We have a world-class, energy system. We rely a lot about, hydro is the balancing power in Sweden. Not all countries have hydro; they need something else, and that's why they primarily come to us. And it's for sure, it stands for driving that. And I mean, just before midsummer, we had a big event with customers from Middle East that chose to have a global summit here in Stockholm for 3 days. Not only because Sweden is lovely in June, but because they wanted to learn. They want, and the reason why
that's a bit new.
That's a bit new. And what they want to learn is because they got attracted by the brand Sweden, and connected with our brand as a company.
Of course, but
they chose to come to Sweden because Sweden attracts in a positive way for business opportunities, both when it comes to buying from Sweden, but also when it comes to investing them.
So if I listening correct, and what you have said before also as well, is that the key for us in Sweden is to keep up, to be in the top position in innovation, one of the most innovative countries both today and tomorrow. That's a key, and then we need the competence as well. Would you like to add something also on the brand Sweden perspective? I mean, you are such a global company,
We're a
but
global company,
can you use it?
And perhaps our brands are perhaps our specific medicines. But what is important from kind of a Swedish brand perspective is the reliability. If you're a patient and in need for a treatment, you want the best possible treatment, and you want it now. You don't want to wait. So reliability for that in that supply chain is extremely important. So we need to have our manufacturing and our supply chain secured. And it is of no coincidence that we happen to have our largest manufacturing facility in Sweden, in Södertälje. Our factory in Södertälje, which employs almost 5,000 people, manufactures 40% of AstraZeneca's total volume of medicines globally. Our export out of Sweden,
that's a lot,
is a value of 150 billion Swedish kronor. It represents 7.5% of Sweden's total export. So that is the importance of the Swedish brand, as well as one of our strategic R&D sites in Gothenburg. But that also means we need global distribution chains. So keeping that import and export channels open are vital for patients to be able to get their treatments worldwide. So I think that's put some kind of perspective on what we are dealing with.
And that's what you are feeling a bit in the global business landscape that is changing in the way it does at the moment, being more and more inward looking in different markets. So that's affecting you on the margin at least.
It is. It definitely need to. That is kind of our ask in all across the globe, is really to help to support that open environment, open trade, import, export, but also sharing. I would say no countries can support that health system on its own. We need to collaborate.
And you all work a lot with supply chains, of course, because that's how the world looks like. Globalization is not dead, but changing a bit, and maybe in the future we will see more of service globalization in that industry. Maybe when it comes to goods, it's maybe at some stabilized level. But looking into the supply chains, and keep in mind that we see more and more of a world dividing into two blocks. We have the democratic one led by the US, and then the authoritarian one led by China and joined by some others. So if you look into the supply chain in this context, and I know when we prepared this panel discussion, many of you mentioned also the industrial policy. So if you could elaborate, who would like to start? Because supply chains is something that we in the Team Sweden perspective also help companies a lot with. So help us a little bit. Who would like to?
I can start if you like.
You start.
Well,
Please.
the last 18 months ending about March of this year were one of the toughest from the supply chain perspective, both in terms of components, materials, availability, as well as cost. And I think in every boardroom around the world, this was probably one of the top couple of topics that was being discussed. I would say that the situation today is relatively calmer, but still unstable. It doesn't feel that it has reached a level where you can heave a sigh of relief and say that this is, largely over. And the undercurrent that makes us feel so is that, again, it goes back a little bit to what we spoke about earlier about localization and this pressure towards localization, that there's this feeling that we are going towards making everything everywhere, and how that could impact how the production is skewed between supply and demand in one region as one example, and also probably puts a further stress on the supply chain to that production, because there's only so many materials in the world. If you have factories producing goods that use those materials in so many different parts of the world, then you are putting a stress on the supply chain even more than what we have done before. So I think that the risk of imbalance still remains. And although the situation is better than last year today, as we see, it will probably carry the risk of changing again.
I guess make a short comment. I mean, we have gone through some sort of hurdle with extremely long lead times, and now we're somehow looking to be back at some more normal lead times, which means maybe you have to wait a year to get delivery rather than much longer than that. I think that's one. And then I think all these changes have also shown that relying upon one single source sub-supplier is something that you should maybe reconsider when you are when you want to make commitments towards the customers as well. So that's, I think it's also with turbulence, with COVID, with everything, is, where are they located? What's your second source and so on? Although you might want to work closely with one, you need some backups.
And I can perhaps echo, I think for us, it's really continue to work to have resilient supply chains, looking into how, where possible, to dual source, for instance. Being in the pharmaceutical business, our manufacturing is very heavily regulated, so it's not kind of a very quick thing to change or add suppliers or components and so on. So that is a long-term work, and it takes time before we materialize that, which also means if we look into currently what we see is also, of course, some regulation coming across that can affect our supply chains. We need appropriate amount of time, and we also need innovation in order to respond to that in a reasonable time, to still make sure that we have access to medicines to patients at all times. So continue to working with that is extremely important for us.
And now I think it's soon time to wrap up this interesting discussion. So a few yes or no questions, and I will put one that we didn't prepare, but that's to see a bit when we are discussing here about these supply chain issues, that it's a tougher business climate out there and also a new business landscape to navigate on. Do you see a potential for Team Sweden, all of us that are behind this survey and support that we give, that we can help even more?
Yeah, I think so, if I may start.
Okay, thanks.
And also, if we talked about, it was a competitiveness, so cost pressure was one of the key things. If we look into, for us, for instance, access to healthcare, affordability is, of course, an extremely important factor in an increasing kind of economic constraint in the whole society. Of course, healthcare has its challenges to receive a fair part. But in that, of course, if you have the best possible treatment option in terms of medicines, you may actually able to decrease the total cost of health. Avoid hospitalization, for instance, would be one of the most contributive factor in order to decrease the total cost of healthcare. And in that perspective, also looking into, how do various government and countries work with reimbursement system, for instance, linking back to sustainability, where we are taking a lead in order to have sustainable medicines going forward. That comes to a cost as well. Do we look into pricing only? When looking into accessibility, affordability, and the future health of not only us as a population, but as the planet as a whole, What are the incentives and how can we open up that kind of collaboration and discussion in order to make sure we have environmental friendly and sustainable and cost efficient?
Perfect. Then I think it's a yes. Do you say yes?
Yes.
Yes or no? It's just yes or no questions
so
now.
it's very easy.
Yes.
Yes, because world is complex.
But it's complex,
Please
so
help.
yes. I mean, we do it jointly, and that's a collaboration issue. So that's why we exist, to help all Swedish companies in Sweden and abroad as well in their global business. Yes or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. Okay. Now you have to choose one and only one, just one word as well. Which is the most important success factor doing business abroad? Ranjit.
Flexibility. I would say flexibility.
Flexibility. Perfect.
Competitiveness.
Of course.
Attract, retain and develop talent.
Oh, that's good. I like that as well. You did it in an excellent way. Perfect. So the last question, yes or no? We start with you, Åsa. Yes or no? That's hard to answer yes or no. Are you optimistic about the future business landscape?
Yes.
Yes.
I will say cautiously very optimistic.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the very last from myself, I dropped the last slide, please. Perfect. Thank you. So just to summarize, I think it stands here, capturing next frontier. I mean, all Swedish companies seems to be ready to deliver on what's the demand that we see out globally. Digitalization, the green transformation, all this. We are truly prepared, but unfortunately it's a somewhat more cautious sentiment out there, and the economy will be somewhat weaker the coming year, maybe the two coming years. But capturing next frontier, that's where we need to be. And I would like to thank all speakers, including Johan, Andreas, our minister, Manuela, of course, for the excellent presentation of the key insights from the report and survey, and also the panelists, Ranjit, Åsa, Daniel, and of course all you that have taken the time to be with us today in the room and on link all over the world. That's fantastic. Thank you.